I'd like to welcome you to our afternoon session. I hope you had some pretty great conversations in your breakout groups, and hope that you were able to talk about some of the topics that we touched about, but even go beyond that and maybe talk about some of the barriers and what some of your expectations are and how you hope to move advocacy forward. I know we've had a few questions about what next. Frankly, we don't know, but we're hoping that together we can figure out, having gotten this momentum and gotten this much of a great response with people who are interested in talking about this issue, but many more social problems that are there, issues that we need to work on. What do we do as social workers in the state of Wisconsin? So hopefully after our last speaker, we can maybe talk about and share with you what we hope will be sort of the next platform that we can think about how to proceed. And so I'd like to introduce you all to our next speaker, Reverend Dr. Alex G. Jr. Got his doctoral degree in transformational leadership for global cities in Seattle. He is the founder and president of the Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership and Development, is the pastor of Fountain of Life Family Worship Center in Madison, is the author of several books and the Justified Anger article regarding Madison's stark racial disparities. He is married to the former Jacqueline Malone and father of one daughter, Catherine Alexis. Welcome, Reverend G.
Good afternoon. So just how long has this day been for you? Pretty long? Okay, good, all right. You're looking for punishment, you're back for more. Well, it really is an honor to be here today. And when I accepted the invitation, I didn't know that I was the last person, so that comes with a lot of daunting responsibility. So I quickly started negotiating, saying, well, should we do some Q&A? Should we go back and forth, trying to get rid of some of my time? But no, really, it's an honor for a number of reasons. One, because it's really great to be in a position to speak about our city and what's happening in our community and how we can work together to better circumstances. I'm a lifelong resident of Madison, so being able to be here today and talk about our community and not some hypothetical situation really feels good. The other thing is I'm a graduate of UW-Madison, and so this place feels like home for me. And it's really because of this campus that my family lives in Madison. My mother decided to move us from Chicago in 1970. She was, some of you know my story, but she was a high school dropout in about 8th or 9th grade, brilliant woman, still is, too brilliant for her own good and mine, and but wanted to go to college. So she moved us to Madison. I was 6 years old, and she moved us and wanted to be on this campus. And she dropped out after about her junior year because she remarried, was taking care of my ailing stepfather, and just found that it was just too tough to do. I used to be an admissions counselor here in another life, and so I was able to pull up my mother's transcripts. And she was taking 20 and 21 credits semester, and she was killing it. But she just was overwhelmed and just thought she was going to take a week off. Turned out to be like 15. And when I was a senior here, I talked her into going back to school with me. And my mom and I had 3 UW-Madison classes. We had the same undergrad advisor. We took statistics. I don't know if Bob Wardrop is still around. Thank God for Bob Wardrop. I have a degree today because of Bob, and because of that, I was an econ major, and I needed a class that was for social work majors, social science majors. But this place is just, it's been a positive influence because it changed life for my mom. It changed life for both my sister and myself, and it gave my mother a new outlook. It gave her something new and fresh to do. What's unique about this is that my mom got her undergraduate degree in social work from your school. And she graduated a semester before I did, so she beat me by 1 semester. And it's interesting. After writing Justified Anger a year and a half ago, I've gotten quite a bit of publicity and things I've written have been in the paper, but truly, I mean, honestly, my mom was the first G to be in the paper because when she graduated, State Journal did a front page story, said it took time, but mom will graduate. So they had her with her cap and gown on. She won a full fellowship right into the MSSW program. And so in '85, she graduated with her bachelor's degree in Afro-American Studies and Social Work. And in '87, she graduated with her MSSW. I forget, you have 2 S's here, right? You're down, you scaled back, just 1 S, okay. All right, because I remember some places were like 2 and or 1. I remember we were 2. She's got 2. I've got her diploma. She's got 2. She's got so it's very interesting to be here. So that's part of what really intrigued me because I have so appreciated my mother's work. My sister studied social work here as well, and so she worked for Dane County Human Services for a number of years before I hired her to work with Nehemiah, our nonprofit, where she worked for about 20 years. And so I can just, let you understand your life a few years down the road. Arguing with a mother and a sister, both of whom have social work license, is really not a lot of fun. Because when I thought that I was about to really, play the big card and, throw out some theological reality, they threw some dual diagnosis on me and put me in this corner and said, oh, we know what you're doing. And so they called me a whole lot of things that, well, I just wish they had advocated for me rather than just slapping labels on me. And so, so holidays and arguments around the G home growing up was really, really very interesting. But because I respect these 2 women tremendously, and they work to serve our community in amazing ways, and because I appreciate where they develop their training and their ideals and their models for their work, it really felt like an honor to be able to be here today. So I'm hoping that some of what I'm able to share can give you some food for thought, because I really want to talk about some of the thoughts I have from a community advocacy perspective, because you're the experts, you're the social workers, you're the students, and so you don't need me to talk to you about the history and where the craft was developed and when it became professionalized and what its origins are. But I can certainly speak to you as an advocate, as a community leader, excuse me, as a person who runs community programs, what would be helpful, what would have been helpful, and what's going to be helpful in moving us ahead. And so I'd like to just share some thoughts with you, and then hopefully leave some time in a few minutes. If there are any questions that you might have just in general, maybe something I could clarify or just wanting my take on something, I just thought that as we wrap up, it may be helpful just to let this be a little bit more interactive. So as I was preparing for coming here today, I started thinking of a number of things. One, I started talking to people I know who are social workers. I spoke to my mom, I spoke to other people, and I talked to them about their perspectives. But I interviewed a young woman who received her MSW just a few years ago, and I said, if you were to have a community person talk with you months before your graduation or maybe a year into your program, what would you want to hear? What would have been helpful? She said, it would have been helpful to know that I was more influential than I realized. That be sure to let your students, the future social workers, know that you are extremely influential. That when you go out into the field, there are many people who are out there who will see you as the thought leaders because you have the latest theories, you have the latest information, you've read the latest case studies, you've been closer to the fire, and so you bring this new insight. And so she said that she would encourage you to not hide that knowledge and that information, to act upon it, because advocacy is really how do you take knowledge that you have and use it to help someone else, to help the systems produce better outcomes. And so I started by saying that is really important, that your thought leaders, when I interviewed my sister who served as a social worker for a number of years, she was one of 3 African-American social workers who served all of Dane County about 20 years ago. And so what we started noticing is as Madison changed and its diversity changed, back in those days, Andre, we weren't seeing a whole lot of change in the social service department. Again, there were only 3 folks. I think they were all African-American women, and my sister was in an ethnic-specific program. She was with the neighborhood intervention program, and so she was out of the mainstream of social services. And she said, it's very important to understand, Alex, that there were times where judges would read my case notes, where I'd write my recommendations and they would use that into their ruling or their decision finding. So let the social workers know you carry significant weight. And so I'm sure you're going to be fine with all the note-taking and all the information that you're going to be keeping up with, because if there's no paperwork, we all know this, it didn't happen. I've been around social service folks long enough to know that. But I think that this is why it's important that not only do you have the skills to do your work as a case manager or a social worker or a counselor, but that you really begin to weave in some of the things that you heard today from Tamara, from Percy Brown Jr., from the panel folks, Rachel Krinsky and Michael Johnson and Matthew Brongin and Harold Rayford, that you begin to look at some of the things that they said about what advocacy looks like, what some of the issues are, that you ponder some of the questions that Tamara Grigsby asked this morning, you know, about the noble profession, and have we lost our fire, have we lost our zeal, have we lost our passion, have the systems and things changed so that the craft, the work is slightly different than what it was intended to be. I think that it's important to have the knowledge and the theory, but the sensitivity to the issues is very, very important. How many of you have seen the movie Claudine? You haven't seen Claudine? All right, here's one of my assignments, Claudine. Netflix it. Stars Diane Carroll and James Earl Jones. If you remember the old Welcome Back Kotter days, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs was one of the young kids who was in there. There was a blossoming young African-American actress. Her name was Tamu. She used to play on Maude. I'm dating myself. But it was the first time that we saw on a large screen how inner city families interacted with white social workers. And there are these interesting scenes that, you know, a kid would be looking out the window and say, hey, mama, the social worker's coming. So they're hiding the television, they're hiding the toaster. You know, in some ways it's over the top, but in other ways it's fairly accurate, because you're studying, you're paying money, or someone's paying for you to study. It's because you have a heart for changing systems, challenging systems, and advocating for society. And you're committing yourselves to this. You have other options. You're doing this work. And there's a population and a group of people who have already deemed that when you show up, you're the bad guy. You're not even there yet. No cap, no gown, no invitations have been engraved. None of that's been sent out yet. But yet there are people who are thinking, oh, social worker. Hide the toaster. I think we begin with advocacy by understanding that. Don't take it personally. Claudine was made 35 years ago. Half of you weren't even alive when that movie came out. And what happens, and I think that this is what's really difficult, this is whether we're talking about social workers or police officers, or even in my situation, the faith community, there are things that our predecessors have done that have not necessarily been the best practices. But yet here we are on our watch. We have a community that needs our support. We need their involvement, but yet their mothers had an interaction with a social worker. Their fathers had an interaction with the police officers. Their niece and nephew had an interaction with someone in the faith community. And so now we represent all of that pain. Don't take it personally. And then on top of that, there are racial differences. And then there are cultural differences. And then there are ideological and philosophical differences. And so I'm sure you know this already, but just allow me just to reiterate the point. If you're going to be a strong social worker, you have to have thick skin. You have to. Don't take it personally. People have been screwed royally by a system. And so people are fearful. My sister would give me insight sometimes, and she would not give names and things because she was a true, thorough, professional social worker. But she said, Alex, I was sitting in court one time, and we were talking about placement, and there was a white social worker. And there was an African-American man that was advocating for the placement of his son. I'm not sure what happened with the mother, if she was in treatment or in prison. I can't remember what the situation was. But the father, African-American, was advocating for his child. And she said the social worker, in preparing and going to the court, said, I want to find out what his motives are. because black men don't take care of their children. That was said in the chambers, and that played out in the courtroom. That was written into the report, and that caused a decision to be made for a young black child and a father. Now, that's not every social worker, that's not every court, but how many times has that story circulated? Now, for that one, there were several who went in, got that guy, his son, did what they needed to do. But you understand, when you show up, people have already have this picture, this idea. Advocacy's got to happen in light of that, in the face of that distrust. Not only do you have to stand strong in your in understanding your role and not being taken back by that, but you have to then still help to dismantle the system that's gotten things so jacked up and so messed up in the first place. Maybe you didn't sign up for all of that, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but here we are. And so on our watch, we have to wrestle with these things, and we have to really take a look at these things. Judges will listen to you. Courts will listen to you. Parents will listen to you. Principals will listen to you. Administrators will listen to you. So we need you to not only speak, we need you to speak up. We need you to speak knowledgeably. We need you to speak warmly. We need you to speak authoritatively. We need you to speak real sensitivity, because that's important. That is really important. I honestly feel that we're at this critical juncture in society, but particularly in our community. We're here in Madison, the greater Madison-Dane County. You've read the reports, you've heard about them. This has happened on our collective watch. On the watch of social workers, on the watch of the university, on the watch of the faith community, on the watch of nonprofits, on all of our watch. So it's very easy to point fingers. Everyone who was on your panel earlier today worked here in Dane County when these realities came out in a report 1.5 years ago. So we don't really have the luxury of pointing fingers, but we have here, we have now, and we have to begin to really think, how do we wrestle together to make this better? And I don't have the time and energy to make it someone else's fault. We all have a part to play. So I think what we have to do in advocacy is learn how to really work together, how to really connect. In my community, in the African-American community, and it may not gel with everyone else, but black pastors, we carry weight. You may not like it, it may not work with your worldview, that's really tough and immaterial. But in the black community, we carry significant weight. Would you like to tell you how many social workers have called me to ask my perspective on something? Because when they're finished, I am the pastor of the abusive husband and the abused wife and the affected children. I'm also responsible for their food and their support while they're getting housing. I'm not allowed to say we take care of the women and not the men, we take care of the parents and not the kids. We serve the community. But social workers do not contact me to say, can you sit in, can you talk, can you give us some background, can you give us some help, can you support us? I think that's cheap, that's free support. That's not asked for. It's not solicited. We're not sitting there waiting for social services to call us so we can say, an opportunity to proselytize, another one. We went into this work for similar reasons as you did. We want to bring healing and help. If you're going to advocate for African Americans, you're going to have to cozy up to people African Americans like, and they like the faith community. You don't have to come to church. You don't have to beat a tambourine. You don't have to join the choir. But you might have to come with them when they get their certificate for joining the church. You might sit in on a baby baptism or dedication. You might even be invited to a memorial service or marriage. But you have to understand that's not taboo. There were times when Dane County Human Services broke the mold in a good way. And they started holding joining forces for family meetings in the basements of churches. For a lot of people, they thought, church and state. Well, again, we weren't talking about proselytize, we're talking about rental space. You know, they might be a good church, but I'm sure they didn't sprinkle something in the air, so as soon as you walk in, you're like, I'm gonna convert. And so just understand, we have space, we have folks, we have volunteers. This is what we do. And if you check the record, the origins of social work really came out of the faith community. Local parishes taking care of their communities. And even though dominant culture has been able to subcontract support, by and large, the African American people, when the crap hits the fan, they want to talk to a pastor. Hospitals, cemetery, they really want to. So I'm saying, find out who folks really listen to, what's very supportive. That helps them. That gives them a sense of support. What's your support network? What's your support system? Can we get some folks around here to help you? Who, we just had a great meeting. Who can hold you accountable? Who can meet with you? Who can help to support you as your kids? How can we put a mentoring circle together? We would jump at that opportunity. So just know that that's something that I think would be really, really important. Another thing that I want to suggest, and I think this is where Percy Brown's information was very helpful today, where he just talked about some of the history, the systemic issues in the history of what's happened. The community really needs you to understand U.S. history and the systems that have been created. Not because we're trying to point fingers and make each of you responsible, culpable because of what happened, but it's hard to advocate for an individual if you really don't see them as needing advocacy. I cannot advocate for someone I picture as being the problem. Now, you don't turn a blind eye. If there's an issue, you have to address it. But there are systemic things that you have to address, that they are there. And listen, you all, for those of you that are going to practice in the Dane County area, the downside of having such disproportionate amounts of racial disparity is this. Not only are there so few people of color, because of the racial disparity, it is easy to conclude or to suppose that if someone's a person of color, they are poor, desperate, lacking, in need of remedial services, single parent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's why so many of our kids are missing it in systems, because the thought is we rarely see black kids, and so if we see one, the odds are you're in trouble. So my daughter, whose grandmother graduated from Wisconsin, whose mother and father met here at Wisconsin, graduated from Wisconsin, we have 7 degrees from UW-Madison in my family. With our cousins and my mom, my sister, my wife, and I, 7 of us, or 7 degrees. Some of us have multiple from here. Yet I could not get my daughter to apply. A former recruitment guy, I worked in undergrad admissions. I would tell students when I worked in admissions office, you don't have to go to Wisconsin, but you must apply at home. Apply abroad, but something can happen. Always apply close to home. Couldn't get my daughter to apply. Till one day, after we forced her to do the college tour. She didn't have to join, but my thing is you have to at least see it, because how do you know? Because you do understand, if you grew up in Madison, you know nothing about this place. There's an invisible force field that goes up and down University Avenue. And folks who grow up in Madison don't cross it to come to the campus, and folks on campus do not cross it to come to the community. Very seldomly. And again, I say this, I share my perspective, my piece from several perspectives. I was a student who watched cartoons in what's Ingram Hall now. That used to be the business school. I would watch cartoons in there on Saturday while my mom took exams, because the campus used to have cartoons for kids for adult returning students. And then I came here as a 17-year-old freshman. Then I came to work here. I served in the admissions office. I was the Minority Affairs Director for the School of Pharmacy, and I was a Special Assistant to Chancellor David Ward for Minority Community Relations. So I did what Everett Mitchell's doing now before Lamar Phillips and Dawn Krim were in those positions. And then now I'm a parent of a child here. So my perspective is unique because I've seen this campus as a kid of a student, an employee, and a parent of a student. And that force field up and down University Avenue has not gone away. It's gotten taller. And when I worked on campus, my colleagues knew very little about what happened in the community. And so I think We have to understand that these are realities. So when I finally brought my daughter here and we forced her to do the tour, not to apply, because I couldn't do that, but to tour, she told me, Dad, I didn't apply here because my guidance counselor told me I wouldn't be admitted. That was really the impetus to writing Justified Anger. Because I could handle the police pulling me over in front of my church. Not that I expected it, but I could handle myself. But now you're messing with my child. And she had been admitted to other places, but she wanted to go here because of the legacy thing. You would think that the counselor would have opened her file to see that she was a National Honor Society student. The University of Wisconsin-Madison invited my daughter into their honors program. Her full tuition is paid for undergraduate education. I would have had to pay money for her to go out of state. She gets to go where she wanted to go to school. She gets to live in a beautiful learning community down at Bradley Hall. I get to get another Badger in the family. And I saved 4 years of tuition. But that almost went down the drain because the counselor would not even look at her grades to see that she was, sure, she was a jock, she was an athlete, 5 city titles, individual titles in track and field. But the fact that she didn't even look at her transcript. But I'm an admissions counselor. I've admitted students. I knew she was admissible, so I kept pushing it until I got the principal involved. But what do you do when you don't have the principal on speed dial? And you don't understand the profile that University of Wisconsin-Madison is looking for? Do you know how many black parents just said, okay, baby, let's go to, and nothing's wrong with those other places. But you came here for a reason. So just understand, because of constantly seeing people in distress, people in poverty, you have to look at every individual and every case with fresh eyes. Because if that counselor was sitting here today, one, she would be in tears and thinking she did that. Secondly, she would feel like I was saying she was racist. She would feel horrible. That's why I've never made her name public. I just think she gets overwhelmed in the work and she groups people together. She stopped being an advocate. She should have been pushing my daughter to apply for Ivy League schools rather than telling her she could not get into a Big Ten school in her backyard. I give that example because social workers do that. There are cases where doctors don't listen, teachers don't listen. Oh, we know. So to be an advocate, you have to understand this is real. This is not every counselor, this is not every social worker. But how many times do you think that story went around? And I tell it all over the nation. Because it's not the people who get up and say, I'm going to get some fresh timber and I'm going to burn some crosses on some lawns this here afternoon. It's the folks who went into counseling because they love children. They want to help people. They want to do good. But on a tired afternoon, it's with the wrong daughter. You don't want to do that on your watch. You don't want someone standing up giving a talk about you. Now, I shouldn't have said it that way because that puts a lot of pressure. Okay, let me take that back. Okay, that was just venting. That was totally unprofessional. I'm sorry. Take that back, all right? The point I want you to capture is this is not a bad person. But what you're up against in Dane County is that when there's so much disparity, the assumption is the person's at risk. I show up at meetings. I've shown up at meetings. I was asked to come and speak at something or participate in something at the Madison Club, young 28-year-old, created my own nonprofit. I was invited to the Madison Club, showed up, dressed like this. Nicely dressed woman walked out and handed me her keys and told me where her car was. Now, had I not been running late, old girl would still be looking for that Beamer right now. I just need you to know. I wouldn't have stolen it because I am black and male. I would not have stolen it. But I would have parked it someplace would have been very inconspicuous. Or I'll show up someplace with Craig, who was my assistant, I've got the jacket and the tie on, and they walk straight to him and say, "You must be Dr. G." Not that a jacket and tie makes you a doctor, but white skin doesn't either. Yeah, it's okay to clap behind that. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I like that too. I'm going to use I think social work, incredibly noble profession, had the benefit of being raised by a social worker before and after her degrees. Can't tell you how many families have lived with us over the course of my life. And honestly, my tact, my concern for humanity, and my decision to serve others really is a direct result of the training of a mother who's a very skilled and apt social worker. I want you to feel very good about what you're doing, but I want you to understand you wield a lot of power and authority. Don't deny it. Don't run from it. Don't play it down. Don't act like it doesn't exist. It's there. But since your perspectives are taken seriously, and since your words and your notes are taken with considerable seriousness, make sure that the black people in your lives are not just your clients. Because you can't be their social worker and then have them be your cultural mentor. Let's get kind of quiet on that one. Don't just take your ethnic studies requirements. Did that and I watched Claudine, I'm good. I'm saying build rapport, build relationship. There are more people of color in Madison, Wisconsin than in the history of Madison, Wisconsin. Oh, we don't know where to go to find people. Yeah, you do. If you don't, ask somebody, because they know. But whether it's churches or cultural celebrations, I feel comfortable talking to folks of different ethnic backgrounds because I spend time with them. This is not just a product of 11th grade U.S. history. Social Services 101. I build cross-cultural relationships so that I understand people and can relate. Social workers, a lot of the cross-cultural stuff comes from knowledge. And this is probably not cool. Now I want to talk the whole 45 minutes. Not that this is what I'm about to say is not a cool thing, but I'm not a huge proponent of cultural sensitivity. I call it professional blackface. Because if you can put shoe polish on your face and look like Al Jolson, then you don't have to hire a black staff. I am so tired of my white colleagues having enough continuing ed educations or credit in cultural sensitivity that they can create a university with a degree in it, but yet can't find folks to sit on their board or people to get through a frickin' application process. That's not cultural competency. When I had to diversify my church staff, my nonprofit staff, and even my justified anger work, I had to ask questions, I had to press, and I found people who are Latino, who are Asian, who are white. I had to ask questions, I had to interview, I had to do background, but folks are here. There have never been more black people and people of color in this community than right now. And to say today, it's really hard to find folks. Or, we really just want the best qualified candidate. As if every white person hired is qualified. Can I get an amen, sister? Because these folks ain't talking to me up in here. They forgot I'm a black preacher. I need somebody to say amen. But you can change that is what I'm saying. It's not an indictment. It's an invitation. Now don't ask me because I'm tired and I got a lot of white friends right now. You're going to get emails about this. I know I'm making people mad. That's all right because you have to deal as a social worker. You have to be able to wrestle with your emotions. But what I'm saying is, these are things your predecessors said. These are the things that they say. I don't want them to say that about you. Because when they came out of this program, we were not the worst community for black boys to grow up in. When my mom graduated, we were not 5% of the state's population and 50% of the state's prison population. The disparity, the reading and math levels of 4th and 8th grade black and white students was not the greatest in this nation when my sister practiced social work. But you know what? This is the reality on our watch. And I need you, please, to do something that's different. This is probably not a popular thing, but let me just say it since I'm on a roll. We do a lot of work with the reentry population. Men and women coming out of prison, but mainly men. I've never been to prison. I've only been to the principal's office once, and it was an accident. I was throwing acorns and it hit someone. Really, I wasn't because I didn't play, because my mother was a social worker, but she was also a strict parent. She didn't play on the principal's office. That was like pre-jail. If you go to the principal's office, you go to jail. So Miss Verlene didn't play that. So when I said it was an accident, it really was. I remember the person was Donna Gilbert. She was a friend. I was not trying to hit her in the eye. So you don't believe me? Oh, because I'm black and male, I was trying to. That's a joke, y'all. You can laugh. Oh my gosh. It was really an accident. And so it was enough for me. That was 7th grade. It's like, 8th grade, I was like, oop, I'm not doing that anymore. But my parents divorced when I was young. My father was physically abusive to my mother. It was really why she left Chicago and came to Madison. It was to end that sick relationship. But I realized when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to focus on in my doctoral program, I tried to find things that I thought sounded impressive. But what I was really passionate about was the effect of fatherlessness on African-American males. I found out that one of the greatest things that's impacting that is mass incarceration. So I started doing a support group for ex-offenders. These men were menacing. They were nice, but they would say things like, yeah, I remember like the first time I stabbed somebody, I was 10. I've only been to the principal's office once, and I'm sitting up in a room. But people are talking about the first time. He took a butcher knife to school because somebody took his girlfriend. I said, bruh, how were you that deep in love at 4th grade that you would take a butcher knife to school? That's deep. That's like Tyler Perry stuff. But you know what I found out with each of the men in that group? Each had fatherhood issues. I played mine out by being the perfect little kid. I was going to make my mom proud. I knew she was struggling. I didn't understand economics, but I knew that we had plastic money and other people had real money. I later found out that there were free meal tickets and there were food stamps. It took me a while to understand that. I thought it was cool. It looked like Monopoly money to me. That was cool, but I realized I was never going to cause her any pressure, so I was elected to student council 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I graduated college in 4 years, started at 17. I was never going to break her heart, never disappoint her. I worked out my brokenness by being the good old boy. Some of my friends who didn't have the coaches, the opportunities, the teachers, or the parents that I did took another route. What I'm saying is this. We're becoming pretty efficient in working with ex-offender populations because we go right at the fatherhood wound. Those men that sat in that room with me became employees on my staff. But although it's unorthodox, nothing in my theological training said relate to the client. But I realized maybe that's the problem. They're clients. I don't know that clients change society. And I don't know that I prove the strength of my leadership if I just have a plethora of clients. But if the clients become colleagues and we devise solutions that change systems and limits the number of boys who get into the system, maybe the problem is that we have so many clients and so few colleagues. Now, we're not allowed to talk about that in our professions, and we're not allowed to do that perhaps as social workers. And I'm embarrassed myself because I did not turn my phone off before I walked up in here. Sorry, whenever someone does this in church, I immediately call them out. What I'm saying is, sorry, let me just turn this off. I apologize, I really do. What I did was a bit unorthodox. But what I found was those men didn't need to be scared straight. That's what I grew up watching on PBS. They told me, we've been scared our whole lives. We need love. We need to be respected. We need to be listened to. I loved them. I respected them. I listened to them. They are now the strengths of our programming. Of course, I talk to the heads of DOC. I talk to the figureheads. But when the statisticians come, the reporters come, when the funders come, they want to talk to the ex-offenders. They want to talk to the people who had recidivized and said, what made a difference this time? Talk about the ability to have someone who looks like them, who relates to them. Everyone doesn't look like them, but I make sure that people can relate to them. I don't know to what extent you talk about that. I don't know if that's proper social work policy. How's that working for you? Whatever we're doing has allowed this reality to happen in our communities. So I'm saying you may not have the ability to do that. Maybe that's pastoral license. I don't know. But I know the clipboards that separate social workers and clients is not working for my community. Great for job security, not so good for community. How often do people on the other side of that clipboard become your colleague and help you fix situations? I can tell you ex-offenders and convicted murderers have keys to my office. They work in my mother's home when I'm not there, and they are helping me to keep South Madison, this community, safe. Maybe we need to do away with the word client and dignify the people we serve by calling them people, residents, and understanding that our community lacks and it limps without their input. Because if we have the audacity to believe that we are not fully who we can become as a society without them, maybe we treat them differently. You can call that shot. You can make that change. You can build those bridges. You can do more than be culturally sensitive. You can become culturally relevant, which means your own relationships, not your textbooks, have transformed your ideology. You can do that. And not only can you, you must, because we need you to. Social workers, you have upheld an admirable social order for our society. I also think that we're at a critical juncture where we keep what's worked and we toss what doesn't. People don't want to be your clients. As the sense is, once a client, always a client. We can find ways to move people from that status. That even as a paraprofessional, they can hold their own clipboard and become an intake worker, someone who works with you. It can make a huge, huge difference. You've heard the history, you heard the information. Tamara gave you a challenge, Percy gave you background. The panel gave you options. My task is to give you a charge. The heart, keep the passion, honor your calling. That's what I refer to it as, a calling, of an avocation. Just tweak the strategy. That's all I ask. Affirm the dignity that was lost in the lives of the people you'll be serving, and you'll cover more ground than a stern look. Folks want to be believed in. If you lower the bar, they will meet your expectations. And if you raise it, they will meet your expectations. Social workers who helped my mother transition from Chicago to Madison never treated her like a statistic or me like a menacing young man. They saw our potential, and I am who I am today because I was blessed to be surrounded by people who raised the bar rather than lowering it. Some of those individuals were social workers, and I'm grateful to them for this day. To this day, you have that opportunity. You get to write the end of the story. Please be the social worker, the advocate that sees where the system is broken, but you have enough rapport with the folks you're serving to say, all right, the system's jacked up, but you are too. Stop it. I'll go to the wall for you, but this is what I need you to do. Challenge both sides of them. You can when you have rapport and trust. So much is resting on your shoulders. If in my flippancy I said something that was taken the wrong way, sometimes it's just what I do in the afternoon. I really mean no disrespect. Honestly, I want you to know that what you do is important, and being able to spend part of the afternoon with you and encouraging in your work means a lot to me. So continuing on what you're doing. Your work is so admirable, and I really appreciate you, your work, and this opportunity to talk with you today. Thank you.
All right, it looks like we've come to the end of our program. I'd like to say thank you to the entire committee that worked with Eric and I on putting this conference together. And the staff, many of whom left their busy day today to give us the support that they did at the registration table and making sure that everything was running. And to also thank you. This is a huge turnout. In 5 weeks, being told that there's a conference and coming and having the faith in the content that we were talking about. When Rachel Krinsky spoke, she said that diversity is broad, and there are a number of different, quote unquote, races or cultural groups that you can focus on. In putting this conference together, it's not that we thought that the African American community was the most important, but it's the advocacy angle that appealed to us most as a group. Each of you has a group or a practice area or an advocacy area that you are interested in. And as Reverend G said, this is your charge. You take it and run. Hopefully you've found partners here, people that you can get fired up together on. We as a School of Social Work, I hope that you were hearing the comments that the speakers were sharing. The finger was being pointed at us too. So we didn't say come and point fingers at social work students and social work professionals. That finger was pointed at us too. We are culpable as a School of Social Work and as a university. So we're not saying come and tell us how we can help you fix this. We are saying, how can we as social workers and a School of Social Work and an institution work towards breaking some of the systems that we have seen that keep people chained up in the same conditions that are becoming worse over and over. So what we're going to ask you, whereas you'll be exiting, you have your evaluations, please fill those out. Let us know what you thought about today's event, but also give us thoughts about what you think that we should do in the future. In about 2 weeks or so, you're also going to get an evaluation that looks at sort of the content that we shared, if that resonated with you, and we are going to be looking to you to see what do you want the next steps are. And if you really are serious, I think one of the things I heard about Madison, and one of the things that I know goes on, is we talk and talk and talk until we can talk no more. And that talking has caused the disparities that Tamara talked about today. So it's time to stop talking and make action, start moving. And if you are here today, we trust that you came because you want to have that action, show that movement. And so when we send out that email and say, as a result of the conference, this is what people said, we are hoping that you will come in large numbers with your friends, with your colleagues, with your neighborhood, because something has to change. We can't keep doing the same thing. With that, I say thank you. Go out there, create social change, be a social movement, and have a wonderful day.